person thinking of joining global studies. My name is Kelsey Lee. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, in a family of people who promoted me to go out and see the world. I think that's kind of how all of this started. When I was 11 years old, I first traveled outside of the United States to a country in Africa called Uganda. I'm not really sure how I ended up in Uganda at 11 years old, but I'm sure as heck glad I did. Uganda changed my life. Not only was it my first exposure to culture outside of my own, but it was also my first exposure to a third world country. Uganda opened my eyes to the fact that there are people all over the world that need help and that I could be someone that helped. As time went on, I started to get more and more interested in countries in need and different things that I could do to make an impact. By the time I got to high school, my desire to make an impact only got stronger. I found myself looking for a place or for people who had similar ideas to mine. It wasn't until the end of first semester that I found myself in a global studies meeting. I was super excited about the travel opportunities to come. But here's the thing, global studies really isn't all about traveling. I mean, it can be, but that's one of the coolest parts about it. Every member of the club will walk away with a completely different story, and a pretty good amount of global competence. Thanks, Mrs. Stewart. But in the meantime, here's my story. Let me begin by explaining a little bit about how global studies works. You can join the club at any time. Depending on your graduation year, you have a certain number of points to earn. These points can be earned by doing a whole bunch of things. For me, I traveled a lot. But I also watched a whole bunch of documentaries, visited a lot of different places of worship, hosted a foreign exchange student from Germany, attempted to cook cultural foods, took 3 years of a foreign language, and so much more. But in the end of it all, traveling was a huge part of what global studies was for me. The summer going into junior year, I traveled to Costa Rica with a group of kids from my school. I think the coolest part about the Costa Rica trip, aside from getting to go with a group of classmates, was that it was a conservation trip. We got to plant mangroves, and hike down a waterfall, and zipline in the middle of a jungle, and visit a school, and hang out with crocodiles. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we did a lot, but somehow in all of that, we impacted Costa Rica in a good way. Next stop, London and Paris. These are two cities you have to see to believe. I was super interested in the atmosphere of France since you hear all the time that the French dislike Americans. That couldn't be further than the truth, but you're going to have to visit to see for yourself. I can officially say I rode the London Eye and hiked all the way to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Just kidding, I took an elevator. And Amsterdam. This is one of the most beautiful, culture-rich places I have ever been to. I got to spend some time in the Anne Frank Museum, no cameras allowed, and met up with an old friend. It doesn't get any better than that. Canada. PSA, the people in Canada rock. And so does Tim Hortons. And now Mexico. I spent the couple days I was there hanging out with the world's greatest soccer players, aka kids from an orphanage we got to visit, and practicing my Spanish. It was an awesome trip. I also got the chance to cruise a couple times where I went to Jamaica, Cozumel, Nassau, Grand Cayman, Haiti, St. Kitts, and St. Martin. And then at some point, I went back to Uganda, a couple times. But that taught me a lesson. You don't travel just to go somewhere once. Traveling isn't like a bucket list. You don't cross off a country or a city once just because you went there. You can go back as many times as you want because you really can never be done with a place. 3 years ago, I joined a club because I love to travel. And I think at some point in that period of time, I went from wanting to just go to places to actually traveling with purpose. I went into global studies as a very awkward 14-year-old who had no idea what they wanted to be when they grew up. And now, 3-ish years later, I can say with complete honesty, I still have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. But for right now, I know that I want to learn more languages, travel as often as I can, meet as many people as I can, and make an impact. And all of this I owe to global studies. So thank you, global studies. And to the person thinking of joining this club, today over 102,465 planes will take off, headed to thousands of different places. You may be on one of them. The world is full of pretty cool places. There's a lot to see, a lot to believe, a lot to do, and a whole lot to learn, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Sometimes bad things will happen in these places, and sometimes awesome things will happen. Don't worry though, you're going to meet lots of people. Some of them will be nice, and some won't be. It's not that they can't be, it's just that being a person is hard sometimes. These people have many differences, like if they believe in God or if they don't, what color their skin is, their hair or their eyes, what language they speak, the foods they eat, and so much more. But they have one thing in common, that they are people. You will always have something different about you than the person standing next to you, but I think that's why I love traveling so much. Just like people, places have so many differences, but regardless, people travel. They travel to celebrate those differences. And that is what global studies taught me. That people are so very different, that places are so very different, but that is to be celebrated. Sometimes I think crazy things happen in life that totally alter the path you're taking. Global was that for me. Maybe it will be for you too.